The letter from the stars asterisk. Ryan was a simple boy living on Earth, in a small apartment, in a noisy city, where everything felt the same every day. The same sky, the same road, the same boring routine, and the same cold coffee waiting on his desk every morning. He had no special friends, no big dreams, and no family left except his old cat Max, who always slept on the windowsill without a care in the world. One evening, Ryan sat on his small rooftop, looking at the stars with tired eyes. He had a broken telescope beside him, and an old radio that made more noise than music. He whispered to himself that maybe somewhere out there, something was watching, something different, something bigger than this small world of his. And then, as if the sky heard his words, something strange happened. The stars above him began to shift, slowly moving into a shape, a symbol, glowing like gold fire across the night sky. Like a message written in light. Ryan stood up, confused and a little scared, his heart beating faster, and then the wind stopped completely, not a sound in the air, as if time itself had paused suddenly. From above, something shot down from the sky. A beam of light, silent and quick, and in the center of his rooftop, a small golden letter appeared, floating down gently, landing right in front of him. He picked it up with shaking hands. The paper was warm, glowing, and strange symbols danced on it like they were alive. But then, the symbols turned into English letters, slowly spelling out a message just for him. It read to the chosen heir: "The King of Stars is no more. You are now bound by the will of the galaxy. Come before the moon dies, or lose what is yours forever." Ryan laughed nervously, thinking it must be some prank, maybe a weird viral ad, maybe some kind of dream he forgot to wake up from. But then he looked up again and saw the sky was still glowing with that same golden symbol, unmoving. Watching, he ran downstairs, tried to open his phone. But the screen was black and hot. His watch was spinning backward. The lights in his room flickered like they were scared. Max, the cat, jumped off the windowsill and hissed at nothing. Staring at the sky, something was happening, and Ryan could feel it deep in his chest. Like his body already knew before his mind could understand. Then, with a sound like thunder and wind and 1,000 whispers, a portal opened in front of him. Not a door, not a machine, but a swirling gate of silver light that hummed like a heartbeat. From the portal stepped out 3 tall figures, dressed in glowing armor, with skin like crystal and eyes that held stars inside them. They looked at Ryan, and then they knelt, all 3 of them, one by one, and spoke in a voice that echoed without sound. "Your Majesty, the princesses await." Ryan could not move, could not speak, could only stare, his legs frozen, his thoughts spinning like a storm. One of the armored beings stepped closer and held out a hand. His voice softer now, still echoing, "The king left everything to you. You are his last choice." Ryan whispered, "Why me?" The figure replied, "Because you are the only one who can rule the 4 suns. Because the stars chose you, even if you did not choose them." Before Ryan could ask more, the portal began to pull him, gently but with power, like a wave pulling back to sea. And in seconds he was gone, leaving behind his room, his cat, his world. He opened his eyes and found himself standing inside a giant hall floating in space, where the walls were made of stars and the floor shimmered like galaxies trapped in glass. Ahead of him stood 4 figures, 4 women, tall and glowing, wearing crowns that hummed with energy, and eyes that looked at him like he was an insect under their feet. One of them laughed, cold and sharp. "This is the human. This is the one our father chose. He must have gone mad before he died." Another rolled her eyes. "Earth is a mud ball. Why should we follow some dirt-born weakling?" Ryan stepped back, feeling their anger, their power, their hate burning in their voices, and he realized he was not welcome, not wanted, not believed. Then a soft voice echoed behind him, not loud but deep and powerful. "The king's will is law. You belong to him now, and he belongs to you." Ryan turned to see a large silver orb floating near the ceiling. A royal AI, glowing with wisdom and old power. It continued, "The 4 princesses are now bound by contract. They cannot harm you. They cannot leave you. They cannot rule without youth. Princesses looked at each other, some shocked, some angry. One smiling in a dark way. Ryan felt the weight of a galaxy crash into his chest. He had no idea what was coming next, and above them all, in the endless sky, the stars began to shift again. Ryan stood in the middle of a glowing throne room where the walls shimmered like frozen starlight, and the air felt heavy like a deep breath held too long, and 4 thrones floated above the floor, each one carved from a different cosmic stone, and each throne held a princess with eyes brighter than any sun. Ryan had ever seen. The first princess had flames in her hair, and her throne burned without smoke. She leaned forward with a cruel smile and said in a voice that cracked like fire, "Is this the Earth boy our father left us to? He looks like he got lost on his way to a garbage planet." The second princess wore a robe of liquid crystal, and her voice rang like breaking glass. "He is soft and small and scared. This is an insult to the throne of stars." The third had vines growing from her crown, and her eyes glowed green with ancient power. She did not speak, but the vines around her chair twitched as if angry on their own. Fourth princess sat in silence, her throne made of silver shadow, and her gaze sharp like a blade. She said nothing, but her eyes did not blink once they stayed on Ryan like she was reading his soul. Ryan tried to speak, but his throat was dry, and his voice came out like a whisper. "I do not know why I am here. I did not ask for any of this." The royal AI hovered above them, all glowing softly, and said in a voice that felt like wind passing through time, "By the will of the king, the Earthborn shall be the binding point. He holds the royal claim, the blood seal, and the Starite inheritance. You are now his wards, and he your link to the throne." The princess with flame hair laughed again and stood from her throne, her fire swirling around her. "I would rather burn this palace than follow a human." She raised her hand to strike, but before her power could leave her fingers, a golden chain of light flashed in the air, wrapping around her wrist and pulling her back. The II spoke again, calm and cold. "You are bound by the king's will. Harm to the air is harm to your own blood." The fire faded, and the princess growled but returned to her seat, her eyes burning brighter than before. Ryan felt the weight of the moment press into his chest. He wanted to leave, to wake up in his bed, with Max meowing beside him, but he knew that dream was already too far behind him. The AI floated closer and spoke gently. "You must complete the binding trials, one for each princess. Only then will your rule be confirmed, and the princess is released from the king's contract." Crystal-robed princess leaned forward, smiling with sharp teeth. "Let us make these trials fun. Let us watch the little Earth boy cry." The garden princess said nothing, but the vines around her throne stretched toward Ryan like snakes searching for weakness. Only the silent one remained still, watching, always watching, never blinking. The AI turned to Ryan and said, "Prepare yourself, heir of Earth. Your first trial begins at dawn." Ryan was led to a small chamber where walls changed color with his heartbeat, and the bed was made of woven light. He lay down, but sleep did not come. The voices of the princesses echoed in his mind, their laughter, their hate, their disbelief, and deep inside something else moved. Like a memory not yet remembered. In the early hours, the AI returned and guided him through long halls where stars flowed under the floor and history whispered from the walls. They reached a door made of obsidian and gold, which opened with a sound like thunder. Breathing inside stood a giant room with floating platforms spinning in zero gravity. Lasers danced in the air like angry stars, and at the center a glowing orb pulsed with energy. The AI said, "Reach the orb without falling or being struck. Do this and the first trial will be complete." Ryan stepped forward, his legs shaking, his heart loud in his ears. The platforms moved fast, and the lasers hummed close to his skin. He jumped, he slipped, he grabbed the edge with his fingers burning. He climbed, he rolled, he ducked, and the orb came closer and closer. The fire princess watched from above, her arms crossed, her face amused. "He will fall, he will fail." But Ryan did not fall. He used the movement of the platforms to build speed. He waited, he observed. And then at the right moment, he leaped across a wide gap, spinning through the air, and landed with both feet on the final platform, touching the orb with both hands. The orb exploded into golden light. And the trial room faded back to the palace. The AI declared, "The first trial is complete." The Crystal Princess frowned. The garden. One looked away. The Fire Princess turned her back. But the Silent One tilted her head just slightly, almost like curiosity, almost like respect. Ryan stood breathing hard, his hands glowing faintly from the orb's energy, and for the first time since he arrived, he felt something small but strong inside him. Not fear, not confusion, but purpose. And far across the stars, something ancient stirred, something that remembered the last time a human touched royal power. In the silence before dawn, the palace floated above a nebula where colors moved like living rivers and stars blinked slowly like breathing giants. And Ryan stood at the center of a circular hall where the floor was glass and the sky beneath him stretched forever. The royal AI floated above his head, glowing softly, and said in a calm voice, "The time has come for the royal games to begin. 4 trials shall test the mind, the body, the spirit, and the heart. Each princess holds one key, and only when all are claimed shall the throne be unlocked." The 4 princesses stood across from Ryan, their eyes sharp, their expressions cold, their presence like storms waiting to be named. Fire Princess stepped forward, her crown blazing brighter than yesterday, her voice full of challenge. "I claim the first game. Let us see if Earth dares to dance with flame." AI nodded and the room shifted. The floor beneath them vanished and Ryan found himself standing on a floating metal disc surrounded by a massive arena in space where walls spun like gears and gravity flickered like candlelight. Dozens of floating platforms moved in circles above him, each with strange machines and glowing orbs, while above it all a single throne hovered, waiting for the victor to reach it. The AI's voice echoed again. "This is the zero duel. Win by reaching the throne, or survive until the last second. Weapons are allowed only if created using your mind and surroundings." Ryan took a deep breath, the silence around him louder than any noise, and then the countdown began. 3, 2, 1, begin. Moment the game started, the platforms began to shift, spinning faster and changing height as if they were alive. Ryan jumped to the nearest one, barely catching the edge, his fingers burning from the speed and the energy. From the far end of the arena, a tall creature made of living smoke appeared, holding a blade made of plasma. It rushed toward Ryan without hesitation and swung with deadly speed. Ryan ducked, rolled, and grabbed a metal rod from the ground, using wires around him to create a makeshift shield. Barely blocking the next strike, the impact sent him flying, but he landed on another platform. Rolling hard but alive above him, the princesses watched in silence, except the Fire One, who smiled with a dangerous spark in her eyes. Ryan moved fast, thinking not of power but of survival. He remembered puzzle games from Earth, how every pattern had a rhythm. He started to map the movement of the platforms in his mind, timing each jump with precision, using loose parts from broken machines to build traps and tools. He turned a broken energy coil into a magnetic puller, launched it to bring a larger platform closer, and then jumped again, building a path upward with clever angles and fast thinking. One smoke warrior exploded in light, another slipped into the void. Ryan climbed higher, his legs shaking, his arms cut and bruised, his mind sharp and locked in focus. He reached a platform that hummed with old energy, placing both hands on its core and whispering, "Show me the way." The platform responded, pulsing with light, and then launched upward, carrying him into the sky where the throne waited, spinning slowly. Suddenly, the last smoke warrior appeared from above, falling like a shadow. It swung its blade, and Ryan raised his shield, but it shattered into sparks. The warrior slashed again, and Ryan fell, but before hitting the next platform, he grabbed a loose cable, wrapped it around his wrist, and swung sideways, landing hard but alive, and used the momentum to leap again, this time directly toward the throne. He crashed into it, holding the armrest with both hands, pulling himself up as the final bell rang across the arena. The smoke warriors vanished. The platform stilled, and the throne pulsed with golden light. Ryan had won. Arena faded, returning him to the throne hall, where the Fire Princess stared at him with narrowed eyes, her flame dimmer than before. She stepped closer and placed a glowing shard in his hand, her voice softer but still sharp. You passed the first flame, but the fire does not forgive. She walked away, her crown flickering like a tired storm. The AI spoke again. 1 trial complete, 3 remained. The Crystal Princess smirked, her fingers tracing patterns in the air. Let me prepare the next game. He will not pass through ice as easily as he did through fire. Ryan did not reply. He stood still, holding the shard, feeling its warmth in his palm, and wondering what kind of energy. Lived inside, something royal, something alien, something made beyond Earth. As he walked back to his chamber, he passed Zara, the silent princess, who still said nothing, but this time her eyes followed him, not with hate, not with pride, but with a hint of something else, perhaps doubt, perhaps interest, perhaps a question not yet spoken. Ryan lay on his bed made of light, closed his eyes and whispered into the air, I survived today, now let us see what tomorrow brings. Far away the stars shifted again. Palace slept in silence, while galaxies moved outside its windows like rivers of light. And inside the high library, where stars floated between books and echoes of old kings whispered through walls, Ryan walked alone, his steps light, his eyes sharp, and his heart unsure. He had not planned to sneak inside, but something kept calling him back, a feeling deep in his chest, like something hidden was waiting to be found, not with force, not with power, but with truth. The door to the ancient archive opened with a sigh of stardust, and the light inside was soft like a forgotten memory, and Ryan stepped in, his hand brushing the edge of a floating scroll that glowed with names he could not read. As he moved deeper into the room, screens lit up, showing flashes of alien history, the rise of the 4 suns, the wars of the void, the birth of the royal AI, and then a single name blinking alone in the dark. Earth. Ryan touched the screen, and the images changed, now showing a man who looked human, but taller, older, and wearing a crown of shifting metal. This was the king, the one who named Ryan heir, and behind him stood 4 young girls' eyes, glowing with power, crowns too large for their heads. One of them looked straight at the camera, silent and still, and watching just like she did now. The king spoke in a quiet recording, his voice rough with time. If you see this, then the line has ended, and my daughters are not ready. The galaxy needs balance, not blood. Earth saved me once long ago, and now Earth shall save the throne. Ryan leaned closer, trying to hear more, but the screen faded, and in its place appeared a golden lock sealed by 4 star symbols, and beside it a hidden drawer opened, revealing an old necklace shaped like a key with Earth's map engraved across. Ith reached for it, but before his fingers touched the metal, a voice behind him spoke without sound, only through air, and thought you should not be here. Ryan turned fast, his heart racing, and there she stood, the 4th princess. Zara, silent, her dark silver cloak trailing behind her, her eyes calm but unreadable, and her hands empty but filled with presence. Ryan held up both hands and said with slow words, I did not come to steal, I just needed answers. Zara looked at the screen, then at the necklace, then back at him, and for a moment said nothing, but her eyes softened just enough to feel like maybe she understood something he did not say. He stepped forward, her voice now real, not loud but soft like night. The others do not know what you saw. They never come here. They believe the throne is theirs by birth, by power, by fear. She moved past him and touched the screen once more. The image returned, showing the king on Earth walking through a forest where trees reached the clouds, and beside him walked a human man, older and smiling. The king spoke again. This man gave his life to protect mine. His grandson will hold my crown if my daughters lose their way. Ryan felt the air shift around him, the silence no longer cold but full of weight and memory, and he looked at Zara and asked, why did he choose me? Why not one of you? Zara stepped back, her eyes flickering with a strange light, and her voice held no anger, only truth. Because he saw something in you that he no longer saw in us. Hope without control, power without pride, courage without war. Ryan held the necklace and whispered, do you believe that too? Zara did not answer but turned away, walking toward a side wall where a hidden panel opened without touch, revealing another screen showing maps, battle plans, and names of rebel leaders. Ryan stepped beside her and read the words quickly, his face turning pale as he spoke. What is this? Zara answered, There is a rebellion growing inside the palace, not from outside but from within servant soldiers. Even one of my sisters has begun to move against the king's will. Ryan asked which one. Zara said nothing, but her silence gave the answer. And Ryan knew the fire princess burned with more than anger. She looked at him then and said something he did not expect. If you fall, they will burn everything. But if you rise, they will have to kneel, and that is what they fear. Suddenly a red light flashed across the room. Alarms began to echo, soft at first, then louder. The I voice returned with a tone Ryan had never heard before. Outer ring breached. Unknown ship inbound. Shields down. Power unstable. Evacuate non-combat units. Zara's face changed, not with fear, but with focus. She grabbed the staff from the wall and tossed Ryan a glowing disc. Stay close, follow my path. Do not speak, do not stop. They ran through corridors now pulsing with warning lights. As walls shook and doors opened with flashing signs, guards ran past them, shouting codes while explosions echoed far in the distance. As they reached a large balcony, Ryan stopped and looked up at the sky, where a ship the size of a city floated above them, shaped like a dagger made of stars and flame, its engines roaring like a storm from hell. Ryan turned to Zara, his voice trembling but strong. They are here for me. Zara nodded, her eyes now blazing like twin moons. Then let us show them what the air of Earth condoned. Far across the galaxy, the throne began to glow. The smoke from the sky still danced across the palace towers, while the stars above watched in silence, and Ryan stood in the war chamber, where lights flickered like nervous fireflies and guards moved fast around him, their faces tight with fear and their hands on weapons that hummed with unstable power. Zara stood beside him, her eyes calm, her voice sharp, as she gave silent orders to the palace AI, which hovered above them, glowing with warning lines across its surface, and speaking in a voice that no longer felt peaceful. Unknown forces breached Gate Sector 7. Shields broken. Power core at risk. Enemy forces equipped with cloaked tech and plasma rounds. No known origin within Royal Archives. Ryan looked at the giant screen where a map of the palace showed flashing red lines moving like snakes through the lower halls, and he asked in a steady voice, "Why now? Why so soon?" Zara replied without turning her head, her words cold like the edge of space, "Because they waited until your presence became real, until the trials began, until the blood link was proven." The fire princess entered the chamber, her eyes wide. Her crown cracked, her armor stained with smoke, and she shouted without respect, "This is your fault, Earthboy. You bring war with your breath, and now my people bleed." Ryan stepped forward, but Zara blocked him with one hand, her voice not rising but heavy. "Enough, we must defend the throne first, and fight each other later." The AI interrupted with another update. Sector 7 lost plasma breach, expanding. Unknown energy signature detected. Threat level maximum. Ryan clenched his fists and turned to Zara. "Let me help. I cannot sit and watch others fight for something tied to my name." She nodded once and handed him weapon, not sharp, not deadly, but glowing with pulse energy connected to the palace's ancient grid. "This is a seeker blade. It follows only truth. Swing it only when you know your target." They moved fast through the halls, now shaking with distant blasts and flying debris. Guards fell around them, doors locked and unlocked on their own, and smoke mixed with starlight from shattered windows. The center of the garden tower, where plants once glowed with peace, Ryan saw something that stopped his breath. A group of attackers, not aliens, not outsiders, but palace guards, their faces hidden by dark visors, but their uniforms clear, and one of them turned, removing the visor and revealing the crystal princess, her eyes cold, her voice calm. "You should not have come here yet." Zara stepped forward, her blade ready and her face unreadable. "So it was youth." Crystal princess did not move, did not blink. "He is a mistake. We were never meant to be ruled by a human. We are royalty. He is dirt." Ryan felt something in his chest break, not from pain, but from understanding. This was not rebellion from outside. This was betrayal from within. From the same blood that shared the throne. Zara raised her blade, and the garden vines rose around her, ready to strike. But the crystal princess raised her hand, and vines froze as if touched by ice, and then shattered, falling like glass rain. Ryan moved without thinking, his seeker blade humming with light. He stepped between them, not to fight but to speak. If you hate me, then fight me, but do not tear down your father's house to prove it. The crystal princess laughed softly, no joy in her voice, only sadness. Our father chose wrong, and now he will lose his legacy by your hands. She vanished into Mr. All eyes following, and the walls trembled once more as another blast shook the floor from below. The screamed through the halls. Power core breached, emergency override, failed reactor, collapse in progress. Zara grabbed Ryan's arm and pulled him toward a lift that opened like a falling star, and inside they dropped fast through the palace core, surrounded by spinning light and flashing warnings. Ryan looked at Zara and asked with burning breath, did he know this would happen? Did he send me here to be a shield or a sacrifice? Zara did not answer at first, only stared ahead, and when she finally spoke, her voice was low. He sent you because he believed that love without war could still exist in this galaxy. The lift stopped and the doors opened into a vault that hummed with forgotten power, and inside stood a machine, not a weapon, not a throne, but a glowing sphere floating in zero gravity, pulsing with something older than time. The AI spoke again, its voice weak and flickering. This is the heart of suns. Touch it only if your soul is ready, only if you understand the price. Ryan walked forward, his steps slow, his hand outstretched. His breath caught in his chest, and he touched the sphere with fingers that burned from hope and fear. The light exploded around him, and visions filled his mind, the past, the stars, the birth of the royal line, the king alone on Earth, speaking with a human who offered shelter in a storm and a promise in the dark. Ryan fell to his knees as the light faded, and the AI spoke once more. The air has awakened, the bond is sealed, the throne may now rise. Zara knelt beside him, not as a servant, not as a soldier, but as something else, and Ryan looked at her and whispered, we are not done, are we? She replied, without smile but with strength, no, we are only beginning. And above them all the palace began to breathe again. The palace rose from the ashes of its own silence as lights returned to the shattered towers, and the heart of suns glowed deep beneath the royal floor, while Ryan stood in the center of the chamber, his hands still burning from contact, and his eyes filled with images he could not explain. Around him machines hummed with forgotten songs, and the royal AI now flickered like a candle. In the dark, its voice slow but strong, the blood has spoken, the path is open, the line is alive. Zara stood at his side, her armor cracked, her crown gone, her face marked with dust and light, and she looked at Ryan not with command, not with doubt, but with something that felt close to belief. Ryan turned toward the large circular door on the other side of the chamber, which had remained closed since the king's death, its center marked with 4 symbols, one for each princess, one for each trial. And now one glowed with fire, one with crystal, and one with roots, leaving the last still cold and dim. Zara stepped forward, her hand hovering over the panel beside the door, and she whispered, as if speaking to the ghost of her father, he has passed more than trials, he has passed our pride. The door opened not with noise, but with a wave of warmth, like a memory returned, and inside stood a room not of war or power, but of vision, where stars moved through glass walls and maps of galaxies pulsed. In silence, in the center floated a throne untouched by time, made not of metal or stone, but of woven light and living memory, and around it hovered 4 objects, small and strange, each holding a part of the old king's soul. Ryan stepped inside slowly, his breath heavy and his steps unsure, and as he approached the throne, the royal AI spoke again, its tone no longer cold. This is the seat of the crown. Beyond it lies the truth, not of rule, but of reason. One of the floating objects moved toward Ryan, a cube marked with ancient lines, and as he touched it, the room around him changed once more. He now stood inside a vision where the past unfolded like waves. The king walking through earth forests during a forgotten war, his ship broken, his guards gone, his life saved by a stranger with no weapon, no title, only kindness. That stranger was Ryan's grandfather, who gave shelter to a dying ruler without question, and in return the final king made a promise, one written not with ink but with legacy. If my blood breaks, let yours carry the light. The vision faded, and Ryan dropped to his knees, not from pain, but from weight. And he asked aloud, "Why me? Why now? Why not one of them?" The voice of the king, not from the AI, but from the throne itself, echoed around the chamber, deep and full of stars. Because rule is not born, it is chosen, and choice is not made in palaces but in hearts. Zara stepped beside him and touched the other floating objects, each showing a memory, each showing a trial, each showing moments where her sisters turned from love and into fear. She spoke without anger, only truth. We were raised to rule, but never taught to serve, never told to listen, never shown a world without control. Ryan stood once more, his hands still glowing from the throne, his mind racing with history, and his voice stronger than before. "Then let me lead, not as your master, but as your mirror." The room responded by dimming the stars, slowing their motion, the throne folding into the floor and revealing a hidden platform beneath it, where a second chamber waited, covered in dust and sealed by voices. Zara looked at him, her eyes wide for the first time, and she whispered, "No one has opened that since before we were born." The AI confirmed in its final whisper, "Only the true heir may enter the chamber of balance." Ryan stepped onto the platform and spoke the words he saw in his dream. "By light, by blood, by bond, I return the line." Door opened, and inside lay a circle of star metal carved with names both royal and forgotten, and in the center a sphere of dark crystal pulsing slowly like a sleeping heart. Zara followed him inside, her steps careful, her voice quiet. "This is the source of all power, not a weapon, not a throne, but the memory of balance kept alive by truth." Ryan reached out and touched the crystal, and for a moment he saw every choice made by every ruler before him, every war started from pride, every peace broken by fear, every moment where power was placed above love. He stepped back and closed his eyes and made a vow, not with sound, but with soul. No more. Crystal accepted and turned from dark to silver, and the IS voice returned one final time. "The throne has spoken, the balance has chosen the galaxy as a true heir." As Ryan and Zara walked back into the starlight, the palace began to shift around them, no longer broken, no longer wounded, but reborn, and far beyond the royal sky, in the cold edge of the galaxy, something dark began to move, something ancient, something watching. The sky above the palace turned gold as ancient signals lit up across the galaxy, and every royal beacon that once slept in silence began to blink again, one by one, as if they remembered the promise of a king not yet crowned. Ryan stood on the edge of the celestial balcony, where the stars now bent around the throne chamber, where the heart of suns pulsed with a rhythm older than war, older than fear, older than pride. Behind him, the four princesses stood in a line, not with crowns of fire or robes of power, but in quiet stillness, their eyes locked on the horizon where ships gathered like waves before a storm. And Zara stepped forward, her voice calm like gravity. "They are coming." Ryan nodded, his hands wrapped around the crystal core gifted by the chamber, and glowing with truth and memory and bond. He turned to face them all, and spoke not as a ruler, not as a warrior, but as one who chose to stay. "I will not run." The AI spoke now from the sky itself. Its voice spread through every speaker. "In every world linked to the throne by blood and will, the heir has claimed the circle of stars. The balance has returned, but peace demands proof, and the dark remembers nothing but conquest." A fleet the size of planets moved closer, black ships shaped like blades forged from dead suns, led by a single vessel marked with a red eclipse, and inside it waited the forgotten prince of the outer void, once exiled by the old king, and now returning with a crown made of shadows. The fire princess stepped to Ryan, her face tight with years of anger, and her voice sharp. "Let me lead the battle, allow me to burn them from the sky." Ryan looked at her and shook his head, not with disrespect, but with something stronger. "You are fire, and fire must protect, not destroy." She stepped back, her eyes filled with questions, not arguments. And the crystal princess followed her, speaking for the first time without cold If you fall, we fall to. Zara stepped beside Ryan, her gaze steady, her words shaped by quiet loyalty. Then we rise together. The Black Fleet reached the boundary line that no enemy had crossed since the first crown was forged, and the AI announced with gravity, they demand surrender or war. Ryan looked at the crystal in his hand, then at the sky, then at the faces around him, and he walked to the edge of the balcony, where a beam of light rose from the heart and connected to him, wrapping his body in armor made from memory and energy and light. He stepped into the air, carried by the beam rising toward the fleet where silence held everything in its grip. And once he stood at the front of space itself, he raised the crystal and spoke into every channel across every star. I am Ryan, son of Earth, bound by oath, chosen by legacy, heir by balance, not blood. The Dark Fleet answered with no words, only weapons charging with red fire and power, stolen from fallen systems. But before they could strike the stars behind, Ryan blinked and shifted, and thousands of lights appeared, each one a vessel, each one bearing the mark of the crown. The loyal fleets had awakened, not by force, but by truth. And now they stood with the air, not as armies, but as witness to the final choice. Ryan spoke again, his voice now filled with something larger than sound. I offer peace, not fear, unity, not fire. If you fire, then we defend, not for conquest, but for memory. A moment the sky held its breath, then the red eclipse ship fired one single shot, screaming through space, faster than light and brighter than rage. But before it could hit the heart of suns, it struck the crystal Ryan held, and in that moment, the light exploded, not in flames but in waves of memory, spreading across ships and stars and minds. Visions filled the Dark Fleet of the king who once forgave enemies, of peace built with words of courage, shaped by mercy, of rulers who led not with blades, but with hands open to trust and hope. Dark Prince fell to his knees, not from defeat, but from awakening, and the black ships dimmed one by one, their weapons vanishing into silence, and the AI announced the storm has passed. Ryan floated back to the palace, where the crystal faded into his chest, and the light of the heart calmed, and the throne rose behind him, not to command, but to witness. And one by one, the princesses came forward, not to kneel in submission, but to stand in unity. People of the palace gathered below, their voices rising in song, not of war, not of rule, but of return. Zara stepped to his side, her voice soft. You are not just king of stars now. Ryan smiled, not with pride, but with peace. I am king because I chose to be last when others ran to be first. And as the galaxy turned again, as ships returned to their orbits, as systems reopened their gates, and as forgotten stars lit once more, the palace stood strong under a sky that now carried only one message. The king has risen, and the stars remember.